welcome to Royal Priesthood Roundtable. My name is Kayla. I'm not Johnny. Johnny decided that he wanted me to do this one today, and I'm real excited about it. But first and foremost, we of course want you to know the one thing we always say around here: Jesus loves you, and we love you. So, of course, the main topic of this podcast is to bring people on here to talk about their testimonies and tell people about how Jesus has changed and transformed their life. So this is Rebecca, also known as Ladybug. She's got a great testimony. I love her to death. We partner with Christ Nation, the motorcycle ministry she's a part of, a lot, and I can't wait for y'all to hear what she's got to say. Rebecca?
Hello, everyone. Kayla, thank you for having me. Thank you, Johnny, for the opportunity. We love Royal Priesthood. They do a lot of good in the community, and I'm really happy to be here today just to share what the Lord has done in my life, and is still doing every day. I can give you a testimony from just this week, but we'll go back a little further than that. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to dive in, let's talk about a little bit about your past and how you grew up and how you got to where you're at now.
Sure. So we don't have enough time in the world to go through all of that. So I'm going to try to condense it into a shorter version of my testimony without leaving out what the Lord has accomplished, because it's a lot. So just a heads up, this is not your typical testimony. It goes to some dark places where the Lord brought me from and saved my life. And so I just want to give that little disclaimer. This might be triggering for people who've been through sexual abuse or any kind of sexual assault. So I am 41 years old now, but we'll go all the way back to around third grade. So I grew up in a home in South Carolina. My parents were both very abusive. My mom struggled with mental health problems, and my dad enabled those problems and had his issues of his own. And so throughout my childhood, I was sexually abused by my father and my oldest brother. And so it was difficult growing up in a household like that, where you don't feel like that the people who are supposed to protect you and guide you through life are helping you with that at all. It's more the opposite, like you're not wanted or desired. And so, as you can imagine, as most people that go through things, they all process it differently. And so when I moved out at 16 years old, I ended up living on my own. The Lord really protected my life through that time. There was many times that I prayed and I thought, are you really there? Like, why are you allowing me to go through these things? I don't understand. But then as I moved out on my own, I realized that I was unprepared for life. Like, I had already started working a job. My parents took me out of school in third grade because they were afraid that our teachers would find out what was going on in our home. So they removed all of us from school. And by all of us, I mean my twin brother and my oldest brother, and myself from school. And so it was difficult because I felt like I was behind everyone else. I didn't have the same knowledge. Although I still was able to read, thank goodness, and my grandparents gave us a lot of education material, so I still kept trying to teach myself, even though we were out of school, and we were never homeschooled. And so it was very difficult, but I was like, I'm going to prove them wrong. That was kind of my attitude from being little. And so fast forward to moving out at 16, I met some great people in the apartment complex that I could barely afford. And then I was working at the mall in Greenville, South Carolina, Haywood Mall, if anybody is from there. Hey. But I worked there for about 6 months or so before this guy walked in, and I recognized him immediately because my grandparents used to send us to church camp called the Wilds, and it's in Roswell, North Carolina. And we used to have a ball. It was like our 1 week of freedom from everybody we knew just to go and have fun. But it was also a very strict Christian camp, so there was only so much fun you could have. And so I met this guy then, and he didn't have a clue who I was. I was a total tomboy. I wasn't really into boys, but I thought he was cute. And every girl at camp wanted to date this guy. Every girl knows at some point in your childhood, there's that guy that everybody So everybody has that guy, the one that everybody wants to date, the one that everybody thinks is cute, and all these girls are going nuts over this guy. I was only concerned with kicking his butt in a foosball. That's all I cared about. And I did several times. So if he did remember me, it wasn't a good memory. And so all these years later, he walks into the store that I work in at the mall, and I was like, oh my goodness. He's either going to be mad at me for beating him and embarrassing him, or he's not going to know who I am, which is what I'm hoping for. So he walks in, he goes, hold on a minute. Do I know you? And I was like, oh. And I kind of have this birthmark that gives me away because it follows me everywhere I go. And so he's like, I recognize you from church camp, don't I? And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, it's really good to see you. He said, wow, you've grown up. He's like, do you want to go out sometime? And I guess my inner teenage girl was like, holy crap, I'm going to go on a date with the most popular guy at church camp. And I thought it was this huge deal. Again, 16 years old, living on my own, no business making those kind of decisions. But it was safer than being at my house. And so we went out. First time was like Prince Charming. Took me out to a nice restaurant. We talked. We ended the date. We planned another date. The next time we went out, he was like, I want you to meet some of my friends. We're going to go over to this club. And I was like, I've never been to a club before, so this should be interesting. And I really like to have fun, so I wasn't really worried about that. And I went there with him. Everything seemed fine. We were at this club, but his friends were very, aggressive towards girls. And it made me feel uncomfortable. I was like, what kind of people are these that he's hanging out with? And it really it was my first red flag that I didn't see. Looking back, I can clearly see it. Hello, problem. But then I didn't see it. And again, he was very charming, and he said, oh, don't worry about them. They're just playing around, and, they're not really like that. It's just they're acting crazy.
Right.
And so I was like, okay. So we ended that date, and then the next time we went out, he was like, my friends are going to come again. This time we're going to go to a dance club. And I was like, all right. So we pull up to this place that looks really fancy, all these lights everywhere, huge, wooden door. And I'm thinking, what is this? There's no windows. I'm like, why is there no windows in this building? And so we pull up, and it's very busy. There's cars everywhere. You can hear the music from outside. So I'm like, okay, well, this is like a happening place. This is going to be cool. So we walk in the lobby, and there's really nice floors, this big, huge wooden desk with this is very fancy, and I wasn't a fancy person, so I was in awe. And so I meet this guy at the front, and he's checking IDs and all this stuff, and he's like, do you have your ID? And I said, no, I don't, I forgot it. And I knew I was too young to go in this club at this point, because I was like, uh-oh. But the guy showed their IDs, and so ended up, he was like, the guy I was dating was like, they're having a contest tonight I'm entering you into. You're going to have a great time. It's going to be awesome. And I was like, what kind of contest? He's like, oh, it's fun. Just trust me, it's fun. And so the guy at the front, he was like, you don't belong here, do you? And I was like, what do you mean? I got kind of upset. I'm like, what do you mean I don't belong here? Am I not pretty enough or whatever? And he was like, no, not like you don't belong here. And so I still had no clue what was going on inside of this building. And so we go inside, and I'm looking around like my eyes are this big around because there are half naked women dancing everywhere. And I was like, whoa, what kind of club is this? And he's like, this is a strip club, stupid. And I'm like, that's not what I was expecting. And he was like, you got to go up there with all the rest of the girls. Go up there, and they're going to explain the contest, and then you'll come back down. And I'm thinking, no way. I'm doing no contest in this place. This was before the Lord got a hold of me, though. So you have to understand, I was super quiet growing up, very, I didn't speak up for myself or defend myself at all. So when he told me, this is what you're doing, I followed along. I was used to it in my childhood. My dad and my brothers were all very aggressive people. So I was like, all right, I'm going. So I go up there, and all these girls are primping and doing their hair and doing their makeup and all this stuff. And these girls are trying to help me with my hair. And I'm like, what are we even doing? Oh, it's called an amateur contest. Don't worry. We go downstairs. They play music. Whoever votes the most for you wins, and you win $5,000. And I was like, $5,000? Okay, now I'm more interested. What are we doing? And so we end up going down these steps onto this big stage in front of all these people. And I was like terrified because I'd never been on a stage with that many people except for in church. And so I was like, I don't understand what's happening, what we're supposed to do, how am I supposed to get votes? Like, I didn't know anything. And so I get down there and they start playing music, and I see the very first girl. Luckily, I'm towards the end of the line. And she starts taking her clothes off, and people are just throwing money at her. And I'm like, okay, well, and then everybody starts cheering. The next girl starts going. She got even more money than the first girl. So they eliminated the first girl, and they keep going down this line until they get to me. And I'm thinking, I am not taking my clothes off. Like, I am not taking my clothes off. And so they get to me, and all these people are cheering. And all of a sudden, you kind of get this feeling of, oh, they think I'm pretty. Like, this is pretty cool. Because growing up in an abusive home where my mom basically said, I never wanted a girl, you're ruining my marriage, like all these things, because she knew about the abuse. And you don't think that you're beautiful, you think that you're trash. I mean, that's how I felt about myself. So in this moment, this feeling of all these people cheering for me and throwing money on a stage was like a shock, but it was also like empowering. It felt like, oh my gosh, these people think I'm pretty. This is awesome. And so I still was not going to take all my clothes off. But by the end of the contest, for whatever reason, I got more cheers and votes, probably because I didn't just take all my clothes off like the other girls did. Right. And so I ended up winning this contest. And so after that, they handed me like cash. And I don't know if you've ever held $5,000 in cash, but it's a lot of money. And I was just like, wow. And, you know, you think back now, knowing the word, where it says money is the root of all evil. And that's what it's talking about. That's a whole other sermon for a different day. I won't get into that. But just that feeling of holding that made me feel valuable. But it didn't last, because as soon as I got off the stage, this guy I'm dating took all of my money. And he's like, you did a good job. He's like, now you're going to start working here. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, you'll make this every night. And I was like, $5,000 a night? Like, I'm killing myself working double shifts at the mall, thinking I'm never going to get out of retail ever because I have no GED. Luckily, the place that I worked at didn't require a copy of it. I just told them I had one and I didn't. But I was like, all right, so all I have to do is that, and I can work here every night and make $5,000. That means I only have to work one night a week to pay all of my bills plus more. But I still just didn't feel right. So we went home that night, and his friends were just obnoxious. And when they finally left, I said, you know, I need some time to think about this. He's like, there's nothing to think about. So the next day, he comes home from work where he worked at. And by the way, he's moved himself into my apartment by this point. By the third date, he's moved himself in. And he wasn't invited. He just moved himself in. And so I felt, again, kind of comfortable in the type of powerlessness that I was used to feeling. It was kind of like if you're used to somebody speaking down to you all the time at home, and then you go out and you find your first boyfriend, likely they're going to be talking down to you because that's what you're used to. So you gravitate towards what you know, even if you're in a bad situation. So from there, things just got progressively worse. He quit his job. I was then the sole person paying all of his bills and my bills. And I was making decent money every night, but it wasn't what he said. And so this guy at the front that told me I didn't belong there, when I told him I wanted to work there, he was like, absolutely not. Like, I told you don't belong here. And I said, you don't understand. I don't have a choice. And then he met the guy, and he was like, I'm going to try to look after you, but you know, you don't belong here. Like, you don't want to do this. And I won't go into all the details, but the process of this club to see if you're worthy to work there is beyond what this podcast should be talking about. The darkness in those places where men only go by lust and they only think about money and they treat women like property. And so it was hard for me to sort of get used to that feeling on top of all the other shame I already felt from my childhood. And so I just sort of felt into this numbness where I just went through the motions of doing what I had to do. he would take all of my money. I would give him enough to pay both of our bills, and then he would spend part of it so I'd have to work an extra night or another extra night. And while I was there, he was either in there watching me, telling me to do more work, to work more, or he was taking girls home, which I didn't know at the time, to my apartment. And so after a while of this, I just sort of didn't care anymore. Like, I didn't care about my life anymore. I didn't care about whether I was loved or anything. And I knew God existed, but I felt like he just didn't care about me. And so I had a really hard time with that. And so moving forward from there, just kind of fast forwarding because so much happens in between. Me and the guy at the front, the bouncer, we started having conversations, and he started kind of sharing his life story with me. I shared some of mine with him. We became really good friends, and he was going through a lot. So I was like, I at least have somebody I can trust to talk to, at least as much as you can trust somebody. And so he kept telling me, like, you've got to get away from this guy. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, I don't have a choice. He had started getting violent with me, and he wouldn't let me not work. Like, it was go to work. He would scream, get out of the truck, and you better make this much a night or don't come home. And that's my home. He also messed with my car, so I was dependent on him completely for transportation until this bouncer started picking me up for work, which eventually made my boyfriend very, very upset. And then one day he took me to the mall, and he was starting to be, it's kind of like an abusive relationship. You hear they abuse the woman and then they come home. They're like, I'm so sorry. I'll never do that again. And he took me out for this really romantic day. We ended up at the mall, and all of a sudden he proposes to me in the middle of the mall in front of all these people. And it was a weekend, so it was super busy. And I didn't know what to do. I was freaked out, but I was like, do I really have a choice? And so I was like, if I say yes now, all these people will cheer. I won't be embarrassed. He won't hurt me later. And then I could just say no. Like, I don't want to marry this guy. Because I knew I didn't want to marry him. And so he bought the ring with money I earned, which was insulting enough. But at the time, it just seemed, all this seemed normal to me at the time. And so I remember I hadn't spoken to my parents since I moved out. But all of a sudden, they were pushing this marriage thing. And they found out that his parents were prominent members of a Christian community in Greenville. I won't name the school, but it's like a very popular Christian school. And they wanted me to be a part of that, so it made them look good. And I just remember one day being at a Justice of the Peace, wasn't in a wedding dress or anything, but ended up married. I don't remember anything about that day other than standing there and having to sign a piece of paper and not wanting to. That's all I remember. And so it's kind of like the Lord makes our brains in such a way that we protect ourselves from trauma sometimes by just blocking it out. And I know that was the case that day because I have like flashback memories of certain things, and I know that I don't want to remember the rest. So it was very difficult because now I felt like I was going to have to be with this guy forever. It just seemed to seal my fate. Like, that's it. That's the only chance you got. And so in between there, the bouncer found out that we were engaged, even though I didn't want to be. He was so mad. And I had a conversation with him then, and I said, if I could get away from him, would you take care of me? Because I felt like I didn't have what it took to take care of myself at this point. And he didn't answer me. And so I was like, well, I guess this is just it. This is going to be my life. And it wasn't his fault. It was just it was a very complicated situation. And of course I was broken. He was broken. And so we just it wasn't working that way. So we just stayed friends. And then one day he brought me home from work and noticed still that my car wasn't working, but he knew a little bit about the car. And he said, what's wrong with it anyway? And I said, I have no idea. And so he said, well, pop the hood on it and let me look at it. He did, and then he realized that my boyfriend husband at the time, had taken things loose in the car to keep me from being able to drive it. So he was like, I'm going to fix your car, and that way you can drive your car again. And you have to understand, my first car was an IROC Z28 red Camaro. It was bad. Like, it was awesome car. And I saved up a long time to get that car. My grandparents helped me get it. And so having it taken away from me in a way where I couldn't drive it was devastating. So when he gave me that freedom again and he fixed my car, I was like, I have some hope now. Like maybe I can get out of here. I have a way to leave. And so, but I still had nowhere to go. So I was like, well, he's taken over my apartment. What am I going to do? And so that same day, he came out of the apartment. We had like an outside walkway at the apartment. And so he came out and he's like, what's going on? And so I went up there to talk to him and I was like, why did you take stuff loose from my car? Like, why would you do that? And we were in the apartment and all of a sudden he started raising his voice and getting physical with me. And so I went to go leave and he shoved me up against a wall. Well, before I knew it, this guy that I knew, he ran up the stairs like some kind of superhero and took care of that problem, if you know what I mean. And he basically was like, he gave me his big bag out of the back of his car and he said, go up there and pack all your stuff. You're not staying here another day. And so I did. And then we left there and went to go stay at a hotel. We were still working at the club because both of us were working there and we had to have money to live. And now we're living in a hotel, which is expensive. And so we were still friends. Like nothing else was going on. But going through the divorce with this guy was really hard. But the Lord worked it out in such crazy ways. I had a pro bono lawyer that took on my case. The judge was on my side, and he's like, you can have whatever you want. I said, all I want is to be away from this guy. And I explained what was going on. And so fast forward almost a year or so, maybe a little less than a year actually, and the bouncer and I became like more than friends. We started talking a lot, and we both really cared about each other, but I think we were both scared to get into a relationship. So we were we both come from hard families, and if you don't ever feel what love is supposed to be represented by your parents, it's really difficult for you to know what love really feels like when you're in a relationship.
Right.
So you doubt everything. And you also think, am I even worthy of love? And so it was hard, but eventually he wrote me this beautiful letter on the Hilton paper. I still have it. And it was just the sweetest thing. And he said, I really want us to go out sometime, but I also really just care about you as a person. So there's no pressure, but like, I really care about you. And so we decided to go out. And so crazy thing is, I wish you could pan the camera to him because he's sitting right here, but this is my husband of 21 years, and he was the bouncer at that club. And he saved my life because before we finally got out of there, because just because I was out of that relationship didn't mean it was easy to just walk away from this club. Right. This club was mob run and very dangerous, and there was a lot of things going on there that were just horrifying. There would be people that would come in and try to convince the girls, hey, we'll give you 10 grand if you fly to California. We'll bring you right back, but you'll make 10 grand in a weekend. Well, some girls would go, but they would never come back. And I didn't know what was going on at the time. But the crazy thing is, like, the way the Lord works and moves is we met Chris and Angie, and this is fast forwarding quite some time. We met Chris and Angie, which is Duncan G over Christ Nation Motorcycle Ministry, through actually Chris's brother, Steve. Joe worked for Greenville Water at the time, worked on the campground where Steve works, which is a Church of God campground in Greenville. And he was like, you guys need to like talk to my brother about this motorcycle ministry. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, no. First of all, we just got bikes, and I was like, I don't want to be a part of another Christian group. Like, I can't stand it anymore. I don't want to do it. I had seen Christ misrepresented so many times through supposed Christian people that I was honestly over it. And a lot of things happened between when we first left the club and this time that made that more, but I can't go into all that today because it's too much. But we, he finally convinced me to meet up with these people. We went to Sonic in Simpsonville, I think it was, and Duncan G were there and some of the people from the ministry. And I just did not get a good first impression, not because of anything they did, but a couple of the members said some things, and I was like, no, absolutely not. I'm not into this at all. We left, we went home, and Steve was still bugging him. He's like, come on, you guys got to join. Like, and so we ended up going to one of their meetings because he begged me to go. And so we go to this meeting, and I'm still like, I'm not joining this. And then I heard Chris sharing a little bit and Angie sharing a little bit. And at this point, we had gone, Joe and I both went through a ministry program to become ministers, through a lot of other stories that all run together. But so we had that experience and we knew a lot about the word, but we still hadn't seen it represented by people yet. And so we went to this meeting and we saw them praying for people that were being patched in. And I heard their heart and I thought, this is a little different than what I expected it to be. And we were sitting there and they were handing out paperwork for potential prospects. And I was like, let's do it. And he was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And if we don't like it, we can always quit. We're prospecting. We don't have to stay here. And so we decided we were going to join, and honestly, it's been one of the best decisions of our lives. Like, Christ Nation has gone through so much as a group, as an organization, and seeing their heart and that they love people, just like Johnny and Tracy. They just love people, and they want to help and want to minister and want to be the real hands and feet of Jesus, not the shiny, cleaned up version of church people that I'd seen my whole life. So it was really good to see authentic, messed up, real life people that were still Christians. And so that realness is what prompted us to stay. And so we ended up going through a training. Dunk actually wanted to have a specific thing that the motorcycle ministry could kind of claim as it's what we support, our mission and goal. And so he was praying about it. Meanwhile, the Lord was orchestrating this crazy puzzle in the background through this organization called Switch that I volunteer for. And they are a human trafficking prevention agency. And it's really a ministry, but it's under the guise of like just a regular 501c3, but they minister and they don't hide that. But it's amazing ministry. And so when I heard about it, somebody had asked me, hey, what about your testimony? And I was like, my testimony doesn't apply to this at all. And so they were thinking about things, and Dunk's, the Lord gave him human trafficking. And so we came over there one day and we were sitting on the front porch, and we really hadn't shared our full testimony with anyone because it's a lot. Like from start to finish, it's a lot. It would take several episodes of a podcast to go through it all. But we sat on their front porch and we told them our whole story. And we expected them to do what other people had done when they heard just a small part, which is go, that's glorifying the devil. You really shouldn't tell that story, because we've been told that several times. And we were like, no, but you don't understand. Like, God brought us out of all of this. Like, we're only telling you where we were to show you where we are. Like, you have to tell your testimony. And so they let us tell our testimony, and then Dunk told us about what he thought, and he was like, do you know of anybody? I said, actually, yes. There's an organization that I volunteer for that would be perfect. And it's crazy because I had volunteered with them before, but we set up a training for our group. And that group said, hey, we want to come in and tell your whole group what human trafficking is about, how to look for the signs, like what, like show them what an epidemic it is. And so we had them come in, and we were sitting there in the training that I'd already been through once. And they were going through all the things that it means, like when you're trafficked. And I was like, I was trafficked. Like the first time, it was like a light bulb went off. Like, whoa, wait a minute. All these things apply to me. He was seemingly the perfect guy, Prince Charming, takes you out, gets you involved, quits his job, forces you to pay his bills, moves into your house, like all these different things. And I turned to him and I said, did you know I was trafficked? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, nobody told me. Like, it was like a weight, like the Lord just took this huge weight off my shoulders.
Right.
Because I thought, the whole time, that I was just meant to live this life of misery. Like it was just part of my life story and there was nothing I could do about it. But in reality, it was being a victim of something that happens to millions of women and boys and girls all over the world every year. Like I had no idea that that's what was happening. And so now we very passionately as a motorcycle ministry work with Switch for human trafficking. And the Lord has opened up a door more recently for me to go back into the club situation that I used to work in and be able to witness to girls that are there now and tell them, I can get emotional about this, but tell them that God loves them right where they are. Shameful, dirty, however they feel, that they don't have to clean up before they come to Jesus. That the Lord wants to meet them where they are and He'll do the cleaning. Like we don't have to do that. And the freedom that's in that, and going in for the first time was just like, 3-4 weeks ago, I went in for the first time into the club. And the smells and the sounds and the lights, I was really concerned that it was just going to be a really bad emotional experience for me just because so many bad memories. But when I walked in, I felt purpose. I felt like this is where you have to be. This is where they are. And this is where Jesus went to the woman at the well. This is where Jesus talked to the lepers. This is where he went to the blind on the side of the street. He didn't go into the synagogues and say, let's perform a miracle. Those people already believed. He didn't go into a church and preach. He went to the street. And so for me, now I get the opportunity to go into these clubs and reflect Jesus in my life to these women and say, you know what? I don't know what your story is, but I know I came from one that took me through this very place. And now I'm walking in the freedom of Christ. And I'm able to be loved and give love. And I'm able to receive love from a Father that will never let me down. And I'm able to tell them that there is people that will accept them no matter what their background is. Because as you guys know, you work in this ministry up here, you take people off the streets and you love them where they're at.
Yep.
You don't try to be like, hey, you got to take a shower and clean up and dress this way and be this way and memorize 14 scriptures before you can come into our church. You say, come, all of you who are weary and brokenhearted, and the Lord will give you rest. That's what you say to these people. And that's what we're doing as a ministry now too. And so it's such an honor to know that all the things that the Lord allowed me to go through weren't for just for the sake of it. It was a lot like, and I can't compare myself to Job because good Lord, he went through a lot, but I think about Job often because he still praised the Lord through the middle of all of his mess. Like, even when he was complaining, he was still praising the Lord.
Right.
And we all complain. I mean, there's times in my life where I'm still like, really? But at the same time, it's like he's preparing us. So, like, if I hadn't been through the things that I went through and I hadn't ended up being at that club, I wouldn't be able to talk to the women that I talk to now.
Right.
And I wouldn't be able to tell moms the questions to ask their daughters about the men in their lives and to ask them questions to answer, hey, do you ever feel unsafe in your locker room at school? Do you ever feel unsafe around a coach? Are there people that just give you the heebie-jeebies? Because it's not just heebie-jeebies like, oh, you get this weird feeling. That's the Holy Spirit. And all of us are created to be spoken with the Holy Spirit through
Right.
us. And so when you have that gut feeling, that's the Lord. It's not just, oh, I get this creepy feeling around that one guy. It's because the Lord's showing you something. And those people need love too.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my ministry, but they need love too. And people are able to do that too. And that just shows like the overwhelming love of Christ that no matter how far you go, I mean, I'm looking at this picture right here of the Last Supper and I'm thinking he let Judas eat at that table too. He let him sit there knowing he was going to betray him. And he let him sit there in his filth and still take of his body and take of his blood.
He did.
Because he wanted it for everyone, including the people who are going to betray him. So my whole story is now, and what I want to tell people is that when God meets you wherever you are, and it's usually in one of the darkest places when we finally go, help, because we got nowhere else to look but up. And when we say help, He does not forget about us. He comes to where we are and he pulls us out. And just like Paul and Silas were in prison, they wrote some of the most powerful letters to the churches. They sang songs while they were in chains. And not in the prison we have today,
Right.
in a prison where it was really prison. And so we have to remember, even when things are feeling like there's no hope or like we can't go another day, because people will take their lives every day. I can't go another day. I can't put up with this one more day longer. That there is hope in Christ and that we can turn to him at any time, no matter how hard it is, no matter how broke we are, no matter how many jobs we lose. I mean, it's just, he's so powerful that he can take anyone from anywhere and make them into an apostle,
Right.
make them into a prophet, make them into a miracle worker. And he's done it time and time again.
Yeah. He absolutely has. You have a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna bring you back one day so you can tell a little bit more of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is an amazing story, and I look up to you.
Thank you.
I do.
Look past me, please. Look to the Lord, because
I do, because it's even the struggles I've been through my whole life. It's amazing that you've come out like you have, and you can still. But you are going to touch a lot of people.
Thank you.
And I hope that this podcast reaches a lot of people. And I want to say that, Christ Nation is a great motorcycle ministry. They've always helped us. I'm about to start crying.
Don't do it. I know I'm doing it.
We are a crying bunch. It's Greer, right? Y'all are in Greer?
Yes.
Yes. They are located in Greer, South Carolina. So absolutely reach out to them if you want to. They are amazing people. All of them are. We are Royal Priesthood Motorcycle Ministry. We all work in the same field. We're all here to help the lonely, help the broken. If you're out there and you need Jesus, all you got to do is reach out. Any of us are here for you.
No matter where you're at.
No matter where you're at, because Jesus wants to clean you up. It ain't our job to clean you.
Thank goodness.
It's our job to pull you in and let him do the work.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say one more time before we go, Jesus loves you and we love you.